Last session we discussed about how do we use the iteration related properties, ng for properties. So the ng for properties like dealing with even odd occurrences, identifying the even and odd occurrences, and index, and without index also how we can identify the specific item by passing that iterating item into the events. And I asked you to try one more with this example. Anyone tried that? Anyone tried that concept? So anyone tried that extra option that I asked you to? Right? In the shopping, I asked you to try some more options, na? Deleting all items, adding the quantity, and finding the total of shop cart items, all these. Have you tried that? Anyone? Yeah. Now, next important here, in the iteration attributes. So we have the option that is iteration track by. How we can use the iteration for track by. Let's see one simple example of the iteration track by. So another option in the iteration property is track by. Actually, track by is a function. Track by is a function pointer. Actually, it is a function pointer. So generally, what is the purpose of track by is usually iteration in UI is controlled by ng for. It is controlled by ng for, that already we know. Now it is controlled by this ng for. Yeah. Actually, what happens is it performs iteration over elements in a collection every time. It performs iteration over elements in a collection every time when requested. So that means this becomes one problem. Suppose you have 100 items or millions of items are there. These 100 items so requires 100 iterations, and over 100 iterations that content is loaded. Now user requested the same content again, means again he requested that 100 items. Then now the page will perform the 100 iterations again. It performs 100 iterations again. That means once the content is loaded, after the content is loaded, there is no change happening in the data. If there is no change happening in the data, now ng for should not perform any iteration again and again. That means page is loaded, data is loaded, and after loading the data, the same data is requested again and again without any change in the data. Then usually what happens is it will load the data every time. It is going to load the data every time. Every time it is going to load the data. Every time it is going to perform the iterations. So due to that, unnecessary iterations regularly required. So what a track-by can do is, track-by can identify, before iteration, it can identify is there any change occurred or not. So it can identify is there any change occurred inside the data. If any change occurred inside the data, then only it will perform iteration. And not only performing iteration on the changed on the data, it will perform iteration only on changed values. That means you can say that it performs iteration only on new values. So suppose 100 iterations are there, 100 records are there. After that 20 records added. Then it will not perform 120 iterations. It will perform only these extra 20 iterations. So whenever change occurred in the data, it will not iterate all the data. It will iterate only the changes. That means only the new values are added. That means without disturbing the existing data, the new data is added. This is what we need in single page application environment. In single page application environment, once the content is loaded, without disturbing the content, the new content must be added to the page. The existing content which is already loaded, we don't need to reload again and again. That is the approach we need to follow. So this is what controlled by track-by. Track-by will not perform the iterations until or unless some changes occurred. And it performs iteration over only the changes occurred. That is what actually iteration is. So how it happens, how it is going to manage that. Let's see how it is going to handle and how it is going to manage that. So for that, I will just create one simple data. Later, we can bring the data and use the data from any database. Later, we can bring the data and use from any database. At the end, I will show you how to create APIs, server-side integrations, and access the data from database and use them. There you will find it more easier. So because that's how generally we do in real world. Here we will put some hard-coded data and see. Let's run this. Create a new component. So track by demo. Okay. Okay, I'm adding the track by demo. A new component is added here. Fine. Now let's make this track by demo. So in the startup. Okay. In the bootstrap, yeah, track by demo. Fine. Now the track by demo is working fine. localhost, right? Okay, now let's create some data here. So let's go into this track by demo, and in the components, the track by the TS, and I'm adding here some data. So let's add some data here. Let me keep it simple here. Okay, so we have products. Products is an array. In the products array, we are adding so the data, just few objects. One is ID and the name and some price. Okay, later we will bring this from services, APIs and all, we can handle them. Next, name, some mobile like this, so price. Okay, so initially this is the data we are having, and we will create a method here. Add product is a method. This add product method, so we'll use the same object. So this dot products will use the same object, and it will have the same data. It will have the same data, and to that, so one more extra record will be added. One more extra record will be added. So this we can do dynamically later. Dynamically means we can create a form, submit the data from form, and we can add that into the table. We can bring it from a service. All those we will learn in a service concept. Initially, that's fine. This is the data we are having. So we have the products data, the configuration of the products. Okay. Now we will present this data. That means add product is having the same, but one extra record is added. Some change occurred inside that. Currently, when you are presenting this, so let's present this in the UI. So I will just keep here div, and let's keep this container. Okay, and a heading, product details, and here we have a table. So class as table hover. Okay, and in this t head and trth, some name like product ID. So then name and the price. Okay, and we want the table body, the row to repeat. This row have to repeat LET item of products for every product. So the cell should get so item dot ID, and so item dot name, and item dot price, this one. Now when I run this here, so you can see by default these two records are there. I will put a button here. So that means just below that heading, we will just keep a button here in the div, a button. So class BTN and BTN, so primary. And here we are defining add new record. Okay, we are defining that add new record. Usually now when I select add new record, so the new record must be added. That means on click of this button, we will call that add product method, add product. You can see in the design, so here already 2 records are there. I click on add new record, so that means one more record is added. So add new record, it is added. Again I click on here, nothing change happening actually, but observe here. Go to the debugger. In the debugger, let's go to the table, elements in the table. In the table body, you see 3 rows are generated, 3 rows. So I click on add new record. There is no change. Observe from the refresh here, 2 records are there. Go to the table and table body, 2 rows are present. And when I click on add new record, observe in the debugger, the rows, observe them. When I click the button, you can see that the new row is added, but the 2 existing rows are generated again. You see they are generated again. Now after the new row added, I click add record. You can observe that iteration is happening again. I click on add new record, again iteration is happening. That means every time the content is iterating and loading. I click add new, it is adding again. You can see right side, the table body is performing the iterations and loading those rows. So if millions of records you are dealing and those are loading again and again, even when the change not occurred inside them, that is not great. So later I will show you about a concept called lazy loading. Lazy loading we will implement, we will learn about it, where it is loaded only when it is required. Here the concept is the iteration should perform only when any change occurred. So any change occurred. How do we know any change occurred? If you can pass this, how many records are there? You can pass the index numbers. Based on how many records are there, index count, it can identify whether change occurred or not. So that means what we have to do now is here in this function, we will add a function called track changes. So we will say track changes. This track changes will identify any change occurred or not in the index number. That means we will pass the index into it. We will pass the index into it. And it will return that index. It will return that index. So if any change occurred in that index, that means some modification happened. Modification happened means not only adding the record, some value changed, some new item added. Even when value changed in any previous records also, then it will perform iteration on that. And remember, it will perform iteration only on the changes occurred. That is great. That is good. That means it will not perform iteration on all of them. Only the change occurred. And it will update those iterations, update those changes here. Observe here. So this track changes is returning the index number. So we have to get the index number and verify is there any change or not. That means when you are performing here iteration, so ng for here. So what we need to do here is, here we need to use here a function called track by. Track by. Capitalization matters. You have to write exactly like this. It is a function pointer, not function calling, function pointer. That means track by uses, track by uses. It points towards the function. What is the function name? Track changes. Track changes. Track changes is the function. You should not write like a function because you are not calling the function. So you are pointing towards the function. That means we are just pointing towards the function. It is a function pointer. It is not a function calling. So that means what happens is whenever iteration is called, it will first call this function. That function will get the index numbers. It will get the index number of the row. If the index number of row is already existing index number, then it will not do the iterations. If the index number is found as the new index number, if it is found as the new index number, then if it is found as new index number, then it is identified as the change. It is identified as the change, and it will perform iteration over that change. It perform iteration over that change. So this is enough. So just you need to use a track by property, and you need to call a function. That function returns the index number of the records. At any index, if change occurred, then automatically it can update the change. Update the change. That is what generally happens. So when we are dealing with iterations, dealing with the iterations. So now let's see how it happens. So let's check the changes happening or not. Currently, you see in the table, in the body section, 2 rows are present. 2 rows are present. And observe carefully. Now when I click add new record, so in add new record function, so already existing rows are there. Along with that, only one row is extra added. Then it can identify the index, and you can see when I click add new record, observe the rows here. Only the last row is added here. You can see that. Only the last row is generated. I click again, then it is not performing iteration. I click again, it is not performing iteration because there is no change again. I click again and again. Previously, without track by, it was performing the iteration on these rows again and again. But now it is not doing that. It is not doing that. That means remove this track by. Remove this track by. So remove this track by. Then see the change here. Now in the table, so body, in the rows, observe here, add new record. The rows are generated. And click again or they are generated. You click again they are generated. So that means it is generating the rows again and again. That means it is iterating over the rows again and again, even when the change not occurred. Now, if you want to track the changes, identify the changes and update the changes only, then you have to use this technique. You have to use this. So that's what you have to manage. That is track changing. So this is the purpose of track by. And when I add track by now, you can see what happens. Track by uses a function to identify is there change occurred or not. By gathering its index numbers, it can identify the change at any index. And when I add new record, you can see that only the last row is added to the table. If 2 rows are there, 3 rows are there, only the last 2 rows are added. So it will not add again and again now. Iteration will not be performed if the change is not detected in the index. So this is track by, how we can manage the option track by and how we can deal with the track by. So while performing the iterations, repeating the items in single page application environment, it is very important that we are not loading the existing content again and again. In the next level, I will show you lazy loading. Lazy loading means when here we are using button, but in lazy loading technique, user can scroll down. When user scroll down, the new content will be added to the page without reloading the complete page, just like your Facebook, YouTube, Gmails. You scroll up, then the new contents will be adding at the bottom. So, and very important, sometimes bottom, sometimes top, anywhere you can add. And when it is adding the new details, the existing details are again not reloaded again and again. So that is what actually we can achieve. So with the help of a concept called lazy loading, lazy loading. So this is one option of working with iterations, and this is iteration track by. So iteration have a lot of properties. So we have index, we have even, odd, first, last, and track by. So these properties are used for handling the iterations and managing the iterations, right? It is not changing only the index. It is identifying at which index change occurred. Understood? It is not identifying the index count. Don't think that it is identifying index count. Okay, na? It is not identifying the index count. It is identifying the change at index. Understood? So don't think that it is identifying the count of index. How many indexes are there, count. It is identifying the change at index, not count of index. Okay. So if it is identifying the change at index, that means it is identifying at which index change occurred. Understood? Don't think that it is counting the index. 3 are there, 4 are there. It is not counting the index. It is tracking by the change at index. It is track changes. Tracking the changes. Tracking the changes means at which index change occurred. That index will be iterated. Understood? Right. So that is not index count. That means you may be thinking like only new record is added. That's not new record added. Change at the index, right? That means, so there are two indexes, and when you click add, there is change occurred in the index. That is change occurred in the count. If a value changed at specific index, then it will identify. You can add several techniques. There are several techniques. You can use so many techniques. Generally, what you can do is, suppose you can use this index, or you can identify the item. So by using its unique references. Unique reference means here product is having product ID. So that means that For everything you have to write a logic. Is it a question how to restrict to add rows? You can count the rows and you can say that if count is greater than this number, don't add rows. That's a silly point, right? So do you think you need an option for that? You can't write a logic for that, Shiva. That means this is array, na? Can you get the length of array? You can get the length of array and you can write a logic that if length is greater than 4, don't add any row. Understood? Huh? Right? These are all very general concepts. Na? Do you think it is a complicated concept? If this dot products dot length, I hope you know this, right? There is a length property. If length is greater than length is less than 2, then only allow to add this. If it is greater than 2, don't allow. It's a very simple point, na? Don't you think so, Shiva? Na? We can find the length, right? And you can restrict it. If it is more than this, you don't want to add rows. That's a general concept of array, right? It is not a very complex concept. This is a general thing in array. You find the length, and if you want to restrict the length, so you can restrict the length. If it is greater than 10 records, we don't want to add, so don't add, right? So that means just you need to write a condition, and you, how many rows you want to add, put the logic there, right? If it is greater than that, less than that, so you will not allow to add new records into it. These are all simple things. Dynamically adding, that is also simple. Already you saw shopping site where we added the rows dynamically. That is the reason when I given you a task, if you don't try these tasks, na, then such kind of questions will come. Why? Because you are not trying the exercises I am giving, then you will feel like you want to answer for every question that rises to you without trying them. Understood? That is the reason we give a task, so that if you try those tasks, then you will understand more logics into that particular concept. If you don't try, these kind of silly questions will come. Like, how do I restrict length? How do I do this? How do I do that? First, you have to do that. That is the reason we give tasks. And I asked, have you done the task? No one responded. All people are like dummies here, right? Just dummy people, right? You are not responding to anything. So I don't want to talk much about this, right? If you are trying the tasks and you are not doing the tasks, so then it is waste of learning your technology. Understood? And these kind of questions will regularly come. How to do this, how to do that, how to first do the task given to you. Those tasks will help you to handle these kind of issues. Understood? Nobody responded. If I asked who has done, 55 people are there here, who has done the task. No one responded. Just simply listening like a audio theme, video audio. If you don't do that, these kind of silly questions will come regularly. You practice. These are not a question asked by any person who is regularly trying all this. So these are all simple things, very simple points. How you can add the items, how we can manage the item. So dynamically adding the elements and all this. Suppose you want to dynamically add record into this. When you are dynamically adding the record into it, it can identify the change and it can update that particular change, right? And how do we dynamically add into it? For example, we want to create a form. Through the form, I need to add a record into this. So you can do that. That is an arena. So for example, suppose here. These are all the things that you able to handle if you start practicing the exercises given to. Why we give exercises? To make you explore to the in-depth concept of every point we are learning. Then you will get a clarity. For example, see here, suppose I'm adding, here I'm adding a form. So let's keep this as a form. This is a class as form group. Okay. Let's add this into a tabular form. Yeah. Means dynamically I'm showing here. These all you need to try by yourself. So you do that practice I given to you, then you will able to do so many things logically. Class call I'm adding here 3 and div class call some 9. Okay, and here I am adding the table and let me add the table that we generated for that here. Now I am creating here a form, right? So this is so register product, and this is product details, and here we are adding. So a simple, I am using some data list data term. So product name, okay. And here data definition, some price. This is text box. Input type is equal to text and class as form control, okay. And price is equal to data definition. Input type is equal to text and class as form control, okay. And here I need to put a button, so add product. So here I am just giving add product, okay. And class btn and btn primary and btn, yeah, btn block, okay, n block. And here, so our intention is, this is the form like we have designed, and I entered the record here, some name and the price, and click add product. That must be added into this, that must be added into it. So then what you can do here, so we need to first create the options here. We need to create the options. So let's create the options, like already this data is there into the products. I will define here. So new product, okay. New product is an object and it is having ID. So this is the ID. And this ID will get the value. That means I want ID to be automatically generated. Then I can get that this dot products dot length plus 1. I can get this new product automatically generated. These are all very basic things for a developer, for a programmer. If he knows arrays, how to collect the length, how to restrict the length. These are all very simple basic points at this level. So name, so we have string type, initially empty. Name is string type, and we have price initially 0. So that is the new product having the options here. We can update this later also. That means here we can keep this initially 0. Okay. Now we need to collect the data coming from the text boxes. That means here we are defining properties like product name, and we have like product price. Whatever details entered, whatever details entered into these text boxes should be collected. So for that we are using ng model, and we are binding product name, and here ng model, so that is the product price. So that means the product name and price they have entered, it will be stored in these references. And when user clicks add button, when user clicks add product button, what should happen is those details must be collected. Those details must be collected. This product name and price must be collected, and it must be updated into that new product. That means this dot new product is equal to, into this new product, the ID comes from this dot products dot length plus 1. That is the ID comes, and the name comes from this dot product name, whatever the product name they entered, and the price comes from this dot product price. So whatever the product price they have entered, product price they have entered. This is the new record. And here, so the record is added into this. That means now this new product must be pushed into the existing array, into the existing array. That means here we have to use this dot products is a array. Into that we need to push. We learned array functions and all, and this dot new product. This is the reason you need to be very strong in your TypeScript array handling and all, because today I will give you some logics related to certain interactions, but when you are going to interviews, when they give you tasks in interviews, they may give in a different criteria. They will ask you different filterings options, sorting options, and you cannot say that I haven't learned this. That's like, then they will ask you, have you learned about arrays? Then you will say that yes, I know arrays, but I don't know how to do this. That's like joke. That means now you need to explore all these things by yourself, how to handle them every point by point, right? So because that's what you need to learn in TypeScript, how to handle the situations of a data. So that's what you have to implement here. There is nothing new here. Only the point is what you learned, you have to keep it in a proper way. That is the reason when I give tasks, so there will be certain meaning for those tasks, because if you can handle those tasks, you can handle so many levels of interviews that will explore your skills, and it will help you to handle several situations. Understood? Right. So that is the reason. So you need to try this. Now see, I am typing the name, some name. Suppose say watch, that is the name, and the price is some price. And I click on add product. So that means that must be added. That means we need to call this add product on the button click. So on this button click, we need to call that add product function. And usually, so this is done. So now you can see here, I am adding the name watch and some price is defined here, and click on add product, that is added here. So these are all the options. That means this is auto generated. If I don't show this example, tomorrow somebody will come and ask, sir, how this ID should be automatically generated? This kind of every point question you will get if you don't try this, right? So this is a very simple thing. Anybody who knows about arrays, he knows about this. That means how do we get the length and use that length as a count so that the next record will be this. These are all the things you need to explore. So when you are dealing with these kind of data manipulations. Now, how do we restrict that? If you know this, you can restrict this. That means when you are adding the records, if length is more than 4, you can say that you cannot add more than this. These are all general basics of programming. And these are the things at Angular level. You have to try all these by yourself and manage them, right? That means you need to be very strong in your language concept. That is the reason we spend almost 3 weeks, 3 weeks, more than 3 weeks on TypeScript. Now several people so have a point like, sir, when you will start Angular? So many days happened with the TypeScript. I want Angular. What you will do with Angular? Nothing you can do with Angular without TypeScript strong knowledge. You can't do anything with Angular. Every person is excited with doing something with Angular without knowing TypeScript properly, practicing it properly. You can't do anything. In Angular, you can't do anything without TypeScript strong knowledge. So keep practicing this. These are things which you cannot ask at this level after understanding all the TypeScript and all. These are very basic things you must able to implement them, right? So, and here the track changes. So how we can update the records, how we can delete the records, all these are the basic things. That means how we can delete the record, how we can update the record. You can add all the functionalities here. So for example, after adding this here, so say uh, this dot product name is empty, and this dot product price is set to 0. That is set to 0. So that means here when you are adding the new records into this, so we are adding the new record into this. Suppose say watch, and some new data is added into this add product, and it is added, and this is empty now. That means after adding, you clean up these details. These kind of queries are very regular, very regular. Now removing the records, finding the records, we are using here, you are tracking the changes. We are tracking the changes at the index number. When we are tracking the changes at that index number, so then we can see the changes happening here. Let's go to the inspect and go to the elements here, elements, and track by. So, and here you can see, and table, in the table body, and you see the 3 rows are generated here. I am adding the new one, suppose some shoe and some price, and I click on add product. You can see right side, you can see only that new row is added. Its iteration is performed. It's not only adding that. Suppose if I do any change in that particular index record, so that means how we can change that index record. That for that again you have to create a form. You need to search for that record, get the details and update the details. That means you need to design by yourself. That means, for example, suppose this is adding the product. So similarly, I want to create a screen for updating the product based on any specific ID. Then obviously have to write another option. Suppose I'm writing here, so update product. Here we are creating another data list. So here we said data term and data term, and in that we said some product ID and data definition. Here we have input type is equal to, so input type is equal to text. So and ID, so in just class is equal to form control. And here suppose other details are there. Data term is equal to name. So name and data term data definition is text box. Data definition input type is equal to text, and the class as form control. And here, so data term is price, and data definition is input type is equal to text, and the class is equal to form control. And here I just given here beside that ID, so we have a button say details. So beside that product ID, we have details. That means now the point is here, after entering the product ID, I click on details. I need to get the details of that ID product and display in these text boxes. I want to get the details and display in the text boxes. Now, after I get the details from that and display in the text, that means in the array, you have to search for this particular ID product and return the details and add to these text boxes. And now, if I don't tell this condition at certain situation, you will come and ask, sir, how do we do this? You will ask because somebody asked in interview. So what do you say? Can't you do this? Huh? What do you say? How you will search for that record based on that index number? How you will search for that record and get the details and display the details? What do you say? How you will do that? That means here we will create a property that is searched product. And what we do is here we will define searched product is a property. So it is an suppose object type. Such a type is an object type. It is having like ID. So it is having like ID. So it is having like name, and it is having like price. That is the searched product. And how you will search for that? So I said get details. Get details is the function. When user executes this get details function, I need to search the product based on the ID. That means we will create here. So product ID is the parameter. We will bind this with the text box. That means ng model is equal to product ID. That means whatever the product ID user entered, it will collect that product ID here. And I need to search for that particular product ID, and I need to display in this searched product. So this dot searched product is equal to searched product is equal to how you will search this dot products is an array. In that products array, we will use a find function. I hope everyone knows that. X implies x dot ID is equal to matching with this dot product ID. That means it will search for that particular ID related product, get that product, and it will store in the searched product. And this searched product details must be displayed. That means we need to get that product details. Only one product is there. We have to get the product and display. So this dot product name comes from this dot searched product dot name, and this dot product price so comes from this dot searched product dot price. That means get details is accessing the details, searching for that product ID, and based on that it is displaying. It is still not complete, so much work is there. Suppose I entered here 2 and click on details. On details click, it should be called. That means on the button details click, it should call get details function. That means when user is entering the product ID and details, it should get the details and display. You can see we are displaying here. We can display in the below text boxes. Currently I'm just displaying here because I'm using the same product name and product price. So better what you can do is you can create two edit name. Edit name is one property, edit price is another property, and you can use that here edit name. So and here you can say edit price, and these you can bind with these text boxes you are having. That means here we have to bind ng model. This should bind with edit name, and this should bind with edit price. So edit price. So it will get the detail and display. Below it will get the detail and display that. I enter product ID 1 details, it should get the details there. I say 2 and details, it get the details of the second one. Now put an update button. Any change in this, it should update into that. You try that. That means you need to identify that record, and how do we change that particular record. These kind of queries are very regularly asked, because these we have to do regularly in our projects. When you are dealing with the data, this is very common thing. And now very important, if you make any change, that means the change occurred in this ID, then it will reiterate that again, because it has to modify that, it has to update that and load it. It will, the change is updated means it is performing iteration there again. So that means now how do we change any particular value in an array? How do we change the particular value in an array? That means you have to get this record and update the name and update the price with the new details you have entered. That means get these new details and update those new details. These are the new details. These details need to updated into the array. At that particular index, you have to do that. That means at that particular index, you have to remove the record and update that record. How to remove and update the record? You know how to remove the record. You can use splice, and using splice only, you can add that record also. You can also use the functions like replace, so for replacing that value, but this is enough. So you can use splice for adding and updating that. So these all types of queries are very common as a developer, right? And these every point, every concept like things we cannot discuss in the classes, because you are very strong in arrays. That knowledge you have to keep in all the queries asked in interviews. Today I showed you this point, but so tomorrow your interviewer may ask some more complex queries inside this. He will say that I want to sort, I want to filter, I want to display only the records that belongs to this category. Then you must able to achieve them. So because every criteria depends on how much you know on array manipulations, right? This is all you need to implement. These are, you have to practice. Do exercise what I am giving to you, then that's enough. By the end, you will able to handle any kind of queries like this. So by Monday, I will show you some more conditions into this, how to handle them. So by Monday, can I expect that exercise to be done by you, right? Will you do that? Ashura, by Monday, I given you a task, na? Will you able to do that? I will do one thing. If you don't do, I will not allow you to the sessions on Monday. I will see how many people have submitted. Maximum how much you can do, you try and submit. Even if you are unable to achieve it completely, doesn't matters. Have you tried or not? That matters for me. Okay, now? Yeah. You failed in achieving everything I asked. That doesn't matter. Okay. Right. How much you have done, that is. Yes.
Hi, sir. Actually, I uploaded that screenshot
Mm-hmm.
I asked you, right?
You,
Whichever we are defining functions,
mm-hmm.
while trying to define objects or methods or even this keyword also, it is showing like I cannot find the name. I uploaded that same screenshot in classroom also,
Classroom.
but
Okay.
is there something I need to install or? Yeah.
Nothing you need to install. Can you share your screen? You uploaded. You said you can't. No? You uploaded the screenshot. I will check that.
Yeah,
I check that then, right? I will check it. What is
yeah,
that code also uploaded? No?
Yes. Screenshot of that. Yeah.
Okay, I will check that. I will check and get back to you. Huh?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yes, Surendra, if you have any doubt, you can raise your hand so that I can get back to you. You don't need to worry that you are unable to unmute yourself. Huh?
Yeah,
Yes,
sure, sir.
what is
So actually, yesterday you have given one task, right? That price should be updated based on the quantity, right?
uh,
So there I am facing the issue by sending the current object price to that particular method.
you create a new property for price and quantity and update that and then send into the record. Understood?
Can you repeat again?
You create some new properties for the new values
Okay.
and then update them into the record. Don't try to update directly the record. It will affect everywhere.
Yeah, that's why I.
No?
Yeah, okay.
Right? Yeah.
Thank you.